I heard a pastor once say that it surprised him how many people didn't know God. We all have people in our lives who we consider an acquaintance. People from our college classes, people who work at the post office, people we know of but don't really know. Unfortunately for many, that is their relationship with God. They know that He exists. They have a loose-knit idea of what He stands for based largely on hearsay or heresy. But they don't know Him. They just know of Him. When some people are asked if they are Christian, they respond by saying, "Well, I go to church," like that's some kind of proof or verifiable evidence. But they can't elaborate beyond that fact. They think that they can hear a pastor's insight once a week, and that will compensate for the lack of time they invest studying themselves or spending time in His presence. They don't even realize how far from Him they actually are. They fight their own battles, make their own decisions, and respond to issues with their own human understanding. They run under the assumption that church equals God. As long as they attend church, then they are attending God in some fashion, right? But that won't be enough to affect the kind of change that Christ did. At His mere presence, people cried out, "The kingdom of heaven is here." Christianity is not just a matter of making it to heaven. It is also a matter of bringing heaven here through the presence of Christ in our lives. Revival will require that level of passion for Him. I've heard that some clergy at conventions will compare and contrast the number of people they have saved and the amount of growth they have attained. Churches in larger towns will take credit for baptizing more people than churches in smaller towns. Then clergy in smaller towns are somewhat offended because their larger counterparts ignore other statistics like percentages based on population. Either way, these presumptions are arrogant ones. Only Christ can save souls. It is blasphemous for people to take credit for His work. Perhaps if all they're doing is running people through a series of steps like some automated car wash, then they can credit themselves for speed and agility. But salvation is more than a series of man-made steps. And churches should not compete with each other for members. When the Great Commission is a common goal, they should share and cherish, not covet. I often get a constricting, sinking feeling about all these superfluous activities many churches promote. Ski trips and concerts and so on. I have the recurrent thought, it's all like Band-Aids. A Band-Aid is something that you use to cover a wound. Because you have good intentions, you know there is a wound and you care about it. You do want the wound to heal. But in truth, Band-Aids can't heal wounds. If anything, they slow the healing process because they smother the wound. And if all you see or focus on is the Band-Aid, then it's easy to forget about the wound entirely. It's easy to assume that the Band-Aid is taking care of business and that it will ward off any potential infection. But actually, we sometimes have to remove a Band-Aid because exposure can be the only hope for healing to begin. Jeremiah relayed this sentiment. They treat the wounds of my people as though they're not serious. One time I heard a youth pastor telling teens how to get friends interested in coming to church. He said, what you do is you ask them to a few fun things. Then you ask them to a few more fun activities. And then, after that, you ask them to come to a church service. It hit me. Since when? When Christ approached Peter, did He tell him, follow me, I've got foosball? Follow me, I've got flat-screen TVs and pool tables. Christ did not have to promise pony rides or cotton candy. I realize that's probably the same strategy that all churches use to get new members, but that's the problem. The next thought was, strong trees don't need weak branches. Weak branches snap under the slightest amount of pressure. The point is that whatever clergy has to do to get people interested in attending, they will have to keep doing to maintain their interest. If someone joins a church looking for a fun club that serves them, when the fun stops or when they don't feel like they're being properly served, they'll stop coming as the workers of iniquity that they are. Surely, there's a balance to everything. People are supposed to have some fun in church and love coming, but we should love what Christ loves more than we love the fun. We should love Christ, whether there's fun or not. Do we really want revival? What if revival involved a revival from the inside out? What if revival meant churches would have to spend a little less time decorating pretty tables and other grandiose events? Would we still pray for it? If revival meant leaving our fancy buildings and going into rough neighborhoods to clean houses for invalid people, if revival meant welcoming people from those rough neighborhoods into our fancy buildings, if revival meant churches would have to get out of their comfort zones and serve their communities far more than they serve themselves, would we still hope for it? If revival meant preaching on a street corner without a spotlight and a microphone, would we still pray for it? The joy of the Lord that would come from such experiences would be enough to sustain us and even drive us onward. If congregation members never participate in serious outreach programs, they will not have a basis of comparison for how fortunate they really are. If they never see true suffering, but moreover the triumph over that suffering through Christ, they will miss a huge witness of God's power. Sometimes appetites must be whetted before a true hunger can grow. So many times, church functions become a chore and members begin to resent all the work they have to do because there's not much life in some of these activities that are done solely for the sake of habit, tradition, or mass marketing campaigns. We can't breathe fresh life into a dying body without having life in our programs. Christ said, "My words have life." His words inspired change, but his actions affected immediate change in the lives around him. And true praise began when people saw that change in his pure motivations for making it, to give beauty for ashes, to love one another, but moreover, most importantly, to show the might and power of God. If these younger generations have drifted away from the church, it's at least in part because the church has drifted away from their Lord. Let him lead, and they will follow.